Welcome back, everybody, to the Omniverse Comics Guide podcast. We are your Omniverse Comics guys. I'm Eric. That's my pal Dave.
Well,
Dave,
hello.
how the hell are you?
I am hell, sir. How about you?
You make hell look so good. You make hell look heavenly. How about that?
Stop you big tart.
Everybody that's with us.
I wish I could return the compliment.
Especially after I take the glasses off. I'm not as cute, right?
Have you seen Eric? He was here just now.
Right? Where'd he go? Everybody who's with us watching on Twitch live, we appreciate it. This is the uncut version for you guys. Anything goes. Enjoy the show. For those that are with us on YouTube, thank you for joining us. Hit that rate and subscribe button, a thumbs up, share the show. We appreciate that. And on all your different podcast platforms, give us a subscribe. We're almost at 900 subscribers on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Might not seem like a big deal to you, but it's a big deal. Be the 900th. It'd be awesome.
I like it.
And of course, most importantly, visit us at omniversecomics.guide. That's the central hub of where everything is that you need for our podcast, collector item specials, our reading orders that Dave puts together meticulously. And for today's topic on our Speakeasy that we're going to, go through generally, but we're going to, broad strokes about the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Do we have a reading order for it?
No, not yet, but the reading order is coming very, very soon. So basically for the last 3 months, 2.5, 3 months, I've been reading Crisis on and off between other things, and putting it all in order. Because, of course, there's tons of tie-ins, tons of really little tie-ins as well, like the Red Skies stuff, where it's just that the skies are red, mate, like sheep dip in the morning, global warming. No, that's the wrong phrase. Anyway, yeah, there's some really, really random things. Some are really relevant, some are not. So I'm putting something together that's, most people will know the 12-issue series, the maxi series. Most people haven't read the tie-ins, at least that weren't around at the time. So
I haven't read the tie-ins.
This is going to put it all together and explain what you should be reading alongside and what you can skip.
That's awesome. I got to say, that's pretty awesome because this is a very, very vast. Apparently, I never read all the companion issues, and they've put out hardcovers, volume 1 and 2.
3.
Show us, Dave.
Here we go. 3 volumes in deluxe format of all the crossovers. Well, most of the crossovers. Some of them aren't here because I've found some stuff as well that isn't often included. That one, yeah. And that's also going to be in there. So it's going to be super, super comprehensive. There's the super guy himself. Super comprehensive. And if you do manage to find these, lucky you, but they all fit together with the deluxe version, so that's what the set looks like together.
I mean, I know we're co-hosts on this podcast, but I don't know how you put something like that together, dude. Where do you begin?
Do you know what this is? Because I tried to read Crisis in my early 20s and I got to issue 10 and I just couldn't do it anymore. And then I didn't know what the hell was going on. I didn't know who most of the characters were. It wasn't a fun read. It was a chore. And then I tried to read it again in my late 20s, and I got to issue 11 and gave up. And then when I started reading more DC, I read it again with a lot of the tie-ins, but not all. Now I'm giving it a full read-through, and I'm giving it the Omniverse treatment. I'm absolutely loving it. It's been a weirdly fun experience, even when some of it's quite a difficult read, because some of the tie-ins, I'm just going seriously, why are there 8 tie-ins from this series that I'm just not liking? But it's a fun challenge. And the main title's actually, I've started to really quite like it.
Where do you begin reading the Crisis? As just to read it, do you start with issue 1 of the main series, and then it branches off like they're known to?
Mostly. And the thing is, there are, like with most of the reading orders I do, sometimes there are bits that subtly tie in that are optional. Mm. So there are a couple of issues of DC Comics Presents that happen first, but they're really, really subtle touches. Like in one of them, the Monitor's hand appears and he says he's going to go and visit Earth 3, and then that leads into Crisis on Infinite Earths number 1. But it's not essential, So I think for the most part, a lot of the tie-ins aren't essential. There are only a handful that I'm going to recommend that are. One of the first ones is there's an issue of Firestorm that just makes it all make a bit more sense if you read it. But that slots between the pages of issue 1. And that's the thing with a lot of these. Some of them take place over the course of several issues of Crisis, which makes doing a reading order particularly hard.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's going to have in between a Crisis issue, because these issues also, before we even get into it, they're a little bit longer than your average 21-page issue
Some,
that was
yeah.
coming out at the time,
Some are
right?
giant size, some are 24 page, and some are
Yeah, like
30, 40 pages.
and they're very dense.
Mm,
Whatever the issue you get, it takes you a little bit of time to get through it because there's a lot of panels,
yeah,
there's a lot of dialogue, and
yeah.
there's a lot to look at. Within those small panels, there's a ton of things to
There's
look for.
loads. So yeah, that's the thing. When I write my overviews, I try and keep it to the most succinct, most important bits of information. Because I
Hmm.
mean, there's one issue that starts off with a caveman character, and I never thought anything of it, and only until the fourth read through that I'm doing now that I've realised he had his own series and he was a DC character. He's a character. He's not a major character, but he had his
Yeah,
own title, and they've
kind of like a
included it.
Kazar.
Yeah, I think he's kind of like a prehistoric Khazar. I mean, I've only read that just a little bit around it. So the more I'm reading it and the more I'm investigating it, the more I'm realizing how I'm finding out more and more about stuff I didn't know before.
Mm. Right, right, right. Okay. All right, let's get into the nitty gritty of it before we begin. Send you a
Okay.
cheers for
Ooh,
the
cheers, my
speakeasies.
dude.
International cheers. Clink. There you go. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was a big
Spilled some
swallow
on my spell.
on your spelf.
Yeah,
Have
yeah.
you have
I
you had
spilled a
six
little on
before this?
myself. No, not yet. Where does this rank in Maxi series crossovers for you?
A little higher than it did before, but I don't adore it. It's probably still a 3-star thing for me. I've had fun reading it,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't rate it that highly. Partly because I find it's not a very accessible read. It's like they've taken all the toys and
Mm-hmm.
they're playing with all of them for you,
Mm-hmm.
which is nice.
Yes.
But
Yes.
if you're new to this stuff, you're probably going to struggle. And I wouldn't start with Crisis. So even when I started doing my DC read through, I started with Crisis. But a lot of these characters and their histories are completely different from the histories you end up with afterwards,
Right.
because that was the whole point. It was a chance to restart their universe. So it's not the best place to start reading DC. If you want to read DC in that golden, I mean, what I would consider to be an actual golden age of DC, which is 87 to 2011,
Mm.
the universe that most people think is like the DC universe.
Yes.
You start with your Man of Steel and Year One Batman and all that kind of stuff. Don't start with Crisis because it's not relevant. It's probably better to read Crisis and treat yourself to it a bit later when you've started to understand the relevance of some things.
That's an interesting take. We've talked about it plenty of times in our pods where we give a little bit of context about Crisis in the
Mm.
timeline of like understanding DC continuity, because I feel like it is how you feel about it as far as a story goes and where it ranks. That could be very subjective, which
Yeah,
is of course the fun of this. I think as far as the impact goes
yeah,
of this, I think it might be in the top 2 of all time
yeah,
crossover events.
easily.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
in
there's
terms of impact, it's huge.
yeah, impact wise, and if you want to read something that has a definite impact on a comic book universe, a comic book company,
Mm-hmm.
and the comic book industry,
Mm.
this is the place to, if you're looking for that. Why? And how come? There's really, I think, in comic talk, specifically DC, but just in general, there's a pre-crisis era and there's a post-crisis era.
Yeah,
And even though the DC universe has changed and there's been new 52s and rebirths and stuff like that, it's still very much a post-crisis era
yeah.
that we're in
More
a
so
lot of
now
ways.
again because they've pretty much said that all the stuff that happened before the New 52 did happen.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it's back. All this stuff is back. But the thing is, they kind of had one before Crisis anyway, because at some unofficial point, in the Silver Age, they started to shift the continuity a bit. So like in the mid 50s up to around the 60s, they shifted it a bit, and we had a different Superman with different elements to his origins and all sorts.
Yes.
So then the original Superman was then considered Earth 2 Superman. All those characters, the Golden Age characters, are all based on Earth 2, even though they came first. And then the main
Right.
continuity was Earth 1. But that's why Crisis came about, because I think they pretty much thought, this is too confusing. We've got Batman in this
Yes.
series and Superman in this series, but he's old in that and he's young here, and isn't this confusing? Whereas now, that would be your ultimate universe. You know,
Exactly.
all they
Yes.
needed to do
Yeah.
was brand it and label it properly, and you go, "Oh, this is Earth One." Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the other weird things about it as well is because you had stuff like All Star Squadron, which focused on the Golden Age characters and was set in the 40s
Yeah.
on Earth 2. But you also had Infinity Inc., which was set in the present day on Earth 2, with those characters who are older plus their legacy characters. Like, how is I'm figuring I was figuring this out as I was reading it this time around, and I can
Right.
understand why people got confused. But yeah, the
Yeah.
idea was to take all this stuff, smash it all together, have all these characters interact with each other with a major threat, and by the end of it, we'd have a refreshed, restarted DC Universe. One problem was that even though we got new books for Wonder Woman, we got a relaunched Superman series with new continuity. Batman's numbering changed, but he was still, but you know, it was a new Batman. Even Jason Todd completely changed. His origin
Right.
was different in post
Yeah.
Crisis.
Right.
But some titles just carried on. New Teen Titans carried on as it was. Green Lantern carried on as it was. So just as they did with the New 52, a couple of books kind of went, yeah, we know this has happened, but we're just going to keep plodding forward. They did the same thing during Crisis. So that's why there's a bit of a confusing period from in 1986 where the restart hadn't happened yet. So even after the Crisis, Earth 1 and Earth 2 characters are still moving about and doing their thing. Because we haven't got to that, what people would refer to now, I guess, as a reboot.
Right.
They hadn't hit that stage yet. So it wasn't planned meticulously to that point, because the relaunches of all those books should have happened after Crisis, and they didn't. It took about another 9 months.
Right. Yeah, it did take time for it to all unfold. The New 52, for instance, after Flashpoint launched with Justice League, this universe didn't launch with a superhero team, which is not a bad idea to introduce a bunch of characters all in one place and then kind of spread out and see which ones people take to. This wasn't the case this time around. Justice League came out
Well,
quite a bit after.
weirdly, Justice League of America carried on as normal. That was one of the books that carried on as normal. So they still recognized that the team were based in Detroit. They existed.
Yes.
There was a series, and then that didn't end until Legends happened. So that ended with
Right.
Legends. Then they
Right.
launched a new
That's true.
Justice League, and that
Right.
was where they took all the new characters, and they had Captain Marvel, Billy Batson, Blue Beetle from what they dubbed Earth 4 in Crisis, but they were from Charlton Comics. They mixed all these characters in together. It's like, this is happening. Captain Atom is now part of the DC universe going forward.
Yeah.
Accept it. And it's one universe.
That's it. It was exciting. The basic storyline, as their worlds are erased from existence one by one, can the heroes from different Earths band together to stop the destruction of all existence? It's going to take the combined powers of two Supermans, The Flash, a new Superboy, Supergirl, Alexander Luthor, and countless others to fight the madness, and not all will survive. You know, I agree with you, what you said before. The first time I tried to get through this, I couldn't. I
Really?
didn't see the hype. I didn't see
Because
like
it is
it just
hyped, isn't it? Like,
it's very hyped.
mm,
It's two creators at that time who were at the peak of their careers with the Teen Titans, right? It was the equivalent of Claremont and Byrne doing a major event. Like, this is the best of the best right now that we
Yeah.
have to offer, taking on this huge moment in comic book history. But when I read it the first time all the way through, I enjoyed it more.
mm,
And then the second time I read it, I enjoyed it even more.
yeah. Pretty
Strangely
much the
enough.
same. Yeah.
And like you said, the more you read the universe after this and kind of get acquainted with the characters and kind of know what it is that made them charming and made people attached to this post-Crisis, like, people really think this is the DC universe
Yeah.
from 1985 on.
They do.
So, other than the Christopher Reeves era of Superman, which is based off of, you know, the 45, 47, how many years was it? Maybe like 40 years or so of Superman existing, which there's a lot to pick from. It really was a perfect slice of that Superman Americana. This is, you know, an amalgamation.
Yeah.
Almost like they almost made it like, this is Superman. We're going to take all the comics and this is what you get, this movie.
Yeah.
But with post-Crisis Superman, now you've got all of these other things. Don't Superman's parents live? How come in the movie he doesn't have parents? because John Byrne kept the parents alive instead of them
Yeah,
having died in a
yeah.
car
I
accident.
think they did die in the. But I mean, like he's
Yeah,
not even necessarily. It's a ongoing love triangle as well between Lois Lane and Lana Lang, and he works as
Lana Lang.
a TV news presenter.
Exactly. So for things like that, like you can see why an event like this is so pivotal to know, like, well, that all happens because this event occurred, and we get
Yes,
that out of it.
and the thing as well is, while it does work as a universe reset, um, there are some elements that carry on through, and I don't just mean those titles that kept their continuity. I mean, like you jump ahead quite a few years, and you'll get to Sinestro Corps War.
Yes.
There's some major players in that story that are from this, and
Yes.
Infinite Crisis, of course, and
I was gonna
that
mention
whole
that
era. But I haven't read
the
that yet, so I don't.
you haven't read Infinite Crisis yet.
No, I have read the mini, but a long time ago. But I haven't done the whole read through yet.
And I'm happy you brought that up because as a sequel, really adds so much to this story. Infinite Crisis pays so much respect to what this story accomplishes, and it enhances those characters. So when
Yeah,
you go
while
back and
still
read
telling
this,
its
you're
own
like,
story in its own right.
yes. And as you read it going back to the first event, and you're like, I know where this ends up going. So
Uh-huh.
this character is now more interesting to me,
Yeah. Well,
right?
another one of those examples of a tie-in that's really key. It was an issue of DC Comics Presents, and it's the introduction of Superboy Prime.
That's huge.
It's huge. It's not in the main series.
Wow.
During that storyline as well, he's dealing with the loss of Supergirl. And even then, that carries on into a storyline in the main Superman series. So there's a couple of issues there. It's DC Comics Presents 87 and Superman 414 that sit between Crisis and Infinite Earth 7 and 8. They're quite important stories. One of them is weird.
Yeah.
One of them's particularly weird. It's got these aliens in that break into the Fortress of Solitude and they just dick about with the computers and that we're going to dick about with your computers. Yeah. And then they leave. Like, what was the point? So there's some weird stuff. Kind of still got that kind of silvery Bronze Age vibe of oddness for the sake of oddness. But some of that stuff is like Superboy Prime, the team up. DC Comics Presents was Superman's team up book before they did the restart.
Yes.
So Batman had Brave and the Bold, and
Yes.
for his team ups, and Superman had DC Comics Presents. There's a bunch of tie-ins from DC Comics Presents for this event. Some of them you can skip. Some of them you do need to read, really.
So there are elements within all of those companion hardbacks that you have that are like, this adds a lot to this. Like, you're missing out on some key information.
For some, one of the things I really like about DC's crossovers that's quite different to Marvel's, for the most part, is that they, even though you later on got books like Civil War, and we had Infinity Gauntlet as well, which had its own series, and you could just read that, or you could just read Civil War, you could just read House of M. You don't have to read everything else. I think DC tends to lean into that a bit more, so you can read the main series and then the issues of the titles that you're already reading, and then it will make sense as to why they're involved in it. But you don't have to read everything. Whereas you take Civil War, you can read the 7-issue mini, but let's be honest, if you're not also reading some of these tie-ins as well, it's not going to 100% make the most sense.
I'm such a hack and such a professional that I didn't even mention who the creators are of this book.
We
I feel it's
haven't
obvious.
talked about who worked on the book.
Yeah, so the people who worked on this book, it's very important to mention that and give them their just due. The main people are Marv Wolfman and George Perez, collaborators on the new Teen Titans for years, really made waves in DC on that title, bringing a certain soap opera element. It was the other company's version of what is essentially the X-Men. Not the same thing, but like their answer to it. Like you were either one or the other.
Team book.
Yeah, exactly. Some of the inkers on this, again,
main characters.
Exactly. Dick Giordano was an inker on this, Carl Kessel, Mike DiCarlo, and of course Jerry Ordway, who I think is the one of George Perez's best collaborators as far as when he's inked by Jerry Ordway. I think it's great.
Imagine being George Perez's inker.
No, it seems like the part.
No, I'm not going to.
It seems honestly like one of the most difficult jobs as a comic book, just in general. If you're a very tedious, like a job that's gonna really grind you down. Jerry, I just imagine George Perez. Me? You're laughing at me?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, like if you think about the workload that would be.
Yeah, but you probably, if you like that kind of thing, though, you're going to love it. If you're an inker and you like inking that kind of thing, you might well love it. But if you don't, that must be horrendous. But I mean, you get some inkers, don't you, who just they aren't detail guys,
No.
and you put them with an artist who's a detail guy, and you're looking at it going, "I'm sorry, this is Arthur Adams." I didn't even realize this was an Arthur Adams book until I got to like page 8 and went, "That's a very Arthur Adams. Like this is Arthur." This doesn't work. Don't put Klaus Janson with Arthur Adams,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
knocking his inking at all. Just doesn't suit that artist. And so
Yeah.
I mean there must be some people who love that level of detail just as much as Perez likes drawing it.
Yeah, and
You'd
that's
have
why
to.
I think Ordway was like probably in my opinion, one of
Yeah.
the best choices to work with George Perez, because his work in and of itself was quite detailed in
Yeah,
his
really
own
detailed.
pencils, right?
True.
So it is a moment where you kind of see these heavy hitters and legends putting everything they've got into this. Now, the first couple of issues of this book, it's not so narrative driven. It's just more like, here's the plot, here's what's happening, here's
Yeah.
more characters, here's more characters.
Here's some things dying.
Yeah, gone.
Yeah.
Oh, gone.
Yeah.
You scared yet? Red sky's red. Another planet gone. Like all your reads, like what the hell?
Yeah.
This is an extinction level event.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get to the point where they start breaking off into squads and teams and having, things that they're trying to. There's a goal at hand.
Yeah.
Then you get into some real meat and potato moments of this story.
Potatoes.
The meat and potatoes of it,
Yeah.
and some major comic book moments.
Yeah, major. And they're very close together, some of the biggest ones.
Yes.
So it's almost like you're going, wow, that was a big one. Let's have a moment to breathe. You did what?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like
it
that
was
quick.
very bold. Like, how are you gonna? And they stayed that way
Oh,
for
yeah.
a long time.
Yeah.
Like they didn't go back to, oh, we're bringing them back. Yeah, I fooled ya. When they came back, it was kind of like, really? They're back?
And it was a long time.
Well-earned moments when they came back, I felt.
Yeah.
Which moment for you was your like, ooh, that's a big one. I feel this battle, this fight, this outcome, or there's a death. Which one was it?
It was so far. Bearing in mind, I've still got 3 issues to reread. Because I've got a feeling 10 is going to be a nice one for me because I don't know much about the Spectre, and I really want to start reading Spectre stuff so I can understand the character because he looks bizarre to me. He's just like he looks like a pantomime villain. What are those little booties about? Why is he dressed in white and green? He looks like he's made of peppermint. I don't understand. But I'm desperate to see how that fight plays off against the Anti-Monitor, especially with the build-up of issue 9, and it ends with him screaming. And, no one can hear. It cuts to the challenge of the unknown for no reason at all. Yeah, have you noticed there's a bit of a weird noise? And then it's like, the Spectre is screaming. Like, why did we bother with that bit with the challenges? It's just to put the challenges in. But so far, it has been the death of Supergirl that I like the most. Because it's quite an intense issue. There's a lot of talking at the start of the issue because this is monthly comics when they didn't really do collected editions. So there's a lot of recapping, and we're at issue 7, so we're halfway through. So it's a big load of recap, and then it's like, right, I've chosen who we want to go to fight the Anti-Monitor. It's you guys, you're the big hitters. Go fight him. And they do. And it's like Superman is bleeding. That doesn't happen. And but I don't know, for some reason for me, the Supergirl moment just won it for me. I liked it. I like it because it does seem like it's just intense stuff happening all the time. Like you say, it's almost like bam, it's like an MTV advert, from the 80s. It's just wow, what's happening here? There's so much going on. And then it gets to this fairly lengthy battle essentially against a building. They're fighting a building for the most part. And the building is wiping them out. It's wiping the floor with them. They haven't even got to the Anti-Monitor yet. And then so she makes the sacrifice. And I really like that moment. I wish we'd seen a little more of the fallout of it. Although I think just having the funeral at the end acknowledges, like, they've taken the time to acknowledge the death. Because it's not necessarily an ongoing war. They think they've won.
Right.
So as far as the heroes are concerned, the crisis is over. So they take that time to acknowledge Supergirl's sacrifice, and they're completely unaware this shit isn't over yet. It's 5 issues to go. You got to read the front cover, my dudes.
Yeah, you're just over the halfway point of this major story, and a key character to the DC universe, especially I think at that time, its main character. I don't know if Batman had surpassed him in sales and popularity yet, but this was
No.
the character. These were the two characters that had movie franchises behind them, right? Superman and Supergirl.
When did Supergirl the film come out?
In and around 84, I would say. So she just had a movie out, and maybe because it bombed, they said, let's
84.
kill her off. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Don't
But
know.
this was
Well, no, I know why they did it. It's because they wanted Superman to be the only Kryptonian.
yes.
So one of
Yes.
the things that you know, that story I mentioned just now, which is Superman 414, which is part of that, him dealing with Supergirl's death, that involves a whole load of Kryptonians from the bottle city of Kandor on a new world called New Krypton, which actually ends up being repeated in a grander
Yes.
scale right towards the end of the DC universe before Flashpoint.
Yes.
But what they wanted to do was take Superman and make him the sole survivor of Krypton. But if you have a Supergirl, a dog, and all these different, he's not as special, which I get, and it makes a lot of sense. But I don't know. One of the reasons why Superman was so popular, I think, was that Superman family element from the silver and bronze age, which is really popular.
Yeah, there's a charm to it.
Yeah.
And I think especially with him, something as simple as him having a dog, it's like something to connect him to home. Maybe he's the only Kryptonian, but at least give him his dog from back home, right? They're just seeing that in the trailer was cool for the new Superman movie that's supposed to come out.
Oh, it was giddy.
Right? So I've always been a fan of like the more characters of that, like Batman having a couple Robins, that's cool. Superman having a cousin and a dog and whatever it is, like all those different things are fun.
Yeah.
But it did, after this, there was a special thing about Superman that you could keep up with, and he was learning about himself and where he was from along with you, instead of I got to use my abilities to blow out a star. Like there wasn't anything Superman couldn't do at a point where it's just like, this isn't even fun.
They did
to
depower
read.
him.
Yeah, depowering him was a great move because,
Yeah.
and it didn't make him the weakest guy. He was still Superman, but he
and then became the Superman by default.
Exactly.
That we all know.
Yes. I'm going to send a shout out to a podcast that I used to listen to every day at work, the Comic Geek Speak podcast. Well, I think it's the original comic book podcast.
Right.
They had one of their co-hosts was a crisis specialist. Like he had written his university dissertation on crisis.
Whoa.
Yeah. And they did a 3-hour episode, him and another guy, just on cover number 1, like issue 1, the cover. And all the details and characters and everything that went into that, which is ridiculous.
That's crazy.
The reason I bring that up is to ask you, which is your favorite cover within these 12? Because there are a couple of incredibly drawn covers, and then some that are just iconic, like images that if you're a frequent comic book reader, going to a store, going to a convention, there's some covers here that you've seen.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
You know, on that same level as Secret Wars number 8.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Secret Wars 1, right? There's that iconic image. Which is it for you?
I was really, really tempted while you're saying that to say issue 8 with the Flash on the cover.
Right.
I really like that. It's really simple, but it looks dark and intense and foreboding. And you don't necessarily think you're going to get what you do get. Even though you've had a surely not moment in issue 7, it's a big deal. But my favourite one is issue 9 because I love the villains. When I see like when George Perez did the cover for Infinity Gauntlet number 4, and you've got all the superhero characters that are taking part in the battle against Thanos running at you or flying at you. I love that. He does that really well, and that's what he's got here. He loves his he loves putting these covers together that are so unnecessarily complicated.
Yes.
And just riddled with faces, and you're going, "Who's that? Who's that?" And it's one of those things that makes you go, like, "I need to find out who is that character. What are they about?" that design is weird. Like, what's that about? So yeah, I like that kind of thing. It's very busy, but I want to know who they're running at, what they're up to, and then you've got Brainiac's skull ship head floating behind them. It's
You know,
just, it's great.
and what's crazy is that on a cover, he could have he could have done something with one figure, very iconic, to capture like a key moment in the book.
Mm,
Instead, he draws every villain he can possibly fit on a
yeah,
page, which is just
yeah,
nuts.
completely nuts. Like you're drawing a monthly title, sometimes with double page count, and you're going to throw every villain onto this cover. How have you got time, George? You lunatic! But it's what he
Lunatic.
loved to do.
Yeah, no, he was the best at it.
Do you have a favorite
Um,
yourself?
I'm a big fan of issue number one, just because again of all the details, and it looks like a crisis. Like, what the heck is happening to
It's a
all of
perfect
these
opening
guys? It's a
image, isn't
perfect
it?
opening. It makes you want to pick up this book. You've got an old Superman, some young heroes, the Teen Titan. Who's that guy over there?
Mm.
The Harbinger plays a very, very key role in this storyline, which I don't know her history prior to this. Does it begin with Crisis?
No.
Is she
What I'm going to... So, haha, another little future plug. So, I do a series of pieces on the site which are dedicated to what to read before an event. While I'm doing the Infinite Crisis reading order, I'm also working on the stuff that's going to be in the what to read before thing. I think, if I remember rightly from the quick skimming I did beforehand to get a feel for it, I think you saw more of her when she was talking to the Monitor in the appearances before Crisis than you saw of the actual Monitor. So he was mostly just an arm and a hand, sat in a chair. So when the Monitor was was making these little appearances, he seemed to be a villain, and he was arming a lot of the villains to fight the heroes. So we're going like, so who's this Monitor guy that's like giving all these bad guys the means to kill the good guys? And it
and where was he featured in? What story? Like
lots of
outside of
random little stories. So I'm going to put a list together. Some of those stories are like mini crossovers as well. So I'm going to cover those too. He first appeared in an issue of New Teen Titans, which makes perfect sense because it's also written by Marv Wolfman. So he was kind of making little cameo appearances for years in DC books.
So he never had like an actual storyline. There wasn't anything about him that was
No,
settled.
he was seeded basically. By the time so that sounded a little bit dodgy. Thank you, Omega Bread. He was seeded as a story element for a long time, but it sounded more like he was going to be a big new villain than what he actually ended up being. And it might well be that they hadn't even decided what he was going to be yet. It might not have been editorially decided that that's where they're going to restart the universe. And maybe that's
When you
where something like that podcast might be a good place to check out that level of detail, because I'm sure that guy would know.
Yeah, for sure. Where do you put him, the Monitor or the Anti-Monitor, I should say, in regards to like when they show up on the page, that level of, oh shit, that guy's here? Is he at kind of the top of the list? When you kind of see Thanos thrown into, you're like, where are they going with this? Like, oh boy, this is extinction level, event level. Is he like Anti-Monitor's the Galactus of DC?
In a way, maybe he's more like he feels like a force of nature in that way, but I don't know. To a degree, I think the one downside, and probably one of the reasons why I didn't get on with it as well on the first couple of reads, because it almost doesn't matter. But he's kind of a means to an end. It doesn't feel like he's some fleshed out character like Thanos,
Right.
because Thanos is a complicated character. That's what makes him so great. That's what
Yeah.
makes him so interesting, is that
Yeah.
he's not as straightforward as I'm just going to kill. I'm just going to kill everyone, and then by the time you get to Infinity War, he's actually one of the characters saving the universe. Like,
Right.
how complicated are your villains here? That's not a bad
Yeah.
guy anymore. But the Anti-Monitor feels like a bit of a means to an end. So from an oh shit kind of perspective, he just seems like a relentless force of nature who is going to wipe out the positive matter universes.
Yeah.
That's what he wants to do. So I mean, that's a massive deal. But I'm not going, oh, what a fascinating character. I mean, when he first appears, he looks, I don't want to say he looks a bit shit, but I mean, he is a bit of a mess compared to what they did a bit later on when he came back and he's all smoothed out. But it's a funny design. Like, it's a very strange design. I don't
Yeah.
dislike it, but it's a bit weird. But he doesn't feel. I'm not going like, oh, what a great villain this is. He's
Yeah,
what's
I
his
need
actual
that toy.
motivation? He just
Yeah.
wants to wipe everything out, and that's fairly simple. And that was the point. It didn't need to be that complicated.
Yeah, because again, this story was a means to an end in a lot of ways. It was a showcase of all the characters and the artistic talent of George Perez in a lot of ways. And thankfully, the sequel really brings a lot of things out of this book that if it was just left untouched, it would be fine, but this gives it a little bit more gravitas. Infinite Crisis gives it a little extra,
Right.
you know, a little
I need
flavor
to
to
read it
it.
again.
It's excellent, especially if you read it the full omnibus and see all the moving parts with it's really really cool. The cover where Supergirl dies. Who did it better? George Perez or John Byrne?
John Byrne.
Yeah, I think I asked you that before. In the
Yeah,
chats, let us know what you guys think because both are very iconic.
they are. I'm
And
not keen on the way he drew Superman in that image, though. To be fair,
what was it about it that you didn't like?
he
Just that
he looks. There's something that doesn't.
too long, too lanky?
I don't know. There's something that's a bit odd about it, and I can't 100% explain it. It's just the weird shapes and the body and stuff. It just looks a bit strange, and like it doesn't feel like that is how you would hold someone. He's kind of holding her with his hand. It doesn't work as well for me as the X-Men one, but probably the X-Men one is ingrained on my brain for a lot longer than Crisis 7.
I should have looked up if there was any reason why he wanted to copy that because they were contemporaries and they had collaborated together. So I'm sure it was a total sign of respect. But
I
to
don't
take
even.
that moment and to make it be one of those like it's like that cover, after Burn. It's clearly after Burn. Like
I
there's
mean,
no question
to a
about it.
degree, but in a way, it also isn't. It's that kind of pose for someone. There might well be another cover that precedes both of those that's done similar. It seems, how dramatically can you draw this? Seeing the character stood there in full form, holding their body, limp, lifeless. That's the best shot. That's the way to do it. I think if you did it too close, you wouldn't get the full effect of it. So if you do it too far away, it's like not important enough. So I think it's the way to do it. But I mean, it's weirdly on the site I'm on, which is Comic Vine at the minute. Just to look at the cover, it says the cover is homaged by Future Comics. It doesn't mention the X-Men reference there at all. So I mean, I don't know. You could argue that it wasn't, and it's just a pose. Um, I don't know.
I think that's a tough argument to make though.
Possibly.
When you put them side because there's been a lot of deaths in comics, like even Death of Superman where Lois is holding Superman by his head. Like it's very, oh man, that's pretty powerful. Like
Yeah.
George Perez is of the talent where he could have done anything. And clearly he did it, I feel, out of a respect because of that moment. Key character dying. What's as iconic as this, but
Yeah. It's
both hit it out of the park.
Oh,
Yeah.
we were talking about stuff in the chat as well. I wanted to try and address a couple of the questions before I forget. Marvel Man asked, I've been trying to find where Earth 1 starts on each comic, and it's really confusing. It is very confusing. I think it was probably decided retrospectively where the shift is, because sometimes some stories are like people go, that's a bit more of an Earth 2 thing, that's a bit more of a. So I am actually working on also a reading order for DC Universe 1952. So it'll be everything from 1952 in order, and that is considered to be officially the beginning of the Silver Age, and that will show you where the Silver Age begins, and that's where you can start.
Nice. You're crazy, but very nice. Who, which character do you think benefited the most from this event happening? Because a lot of characters are reimagined, redesigned, given a breath of fresh air that, in the case of, for instance, Wally West, who takes over the mantle of the Flash because of this is the fate for those who are catching up or don't know really what happens in Crisis. One of the key moments that has been mimicked and recreated in plenty of TV shows and movies and cartoons is those moments of the Flash traveling through time trying to get a message to Batman or to somebody.
Yes.
Ultimately, Barry Allen sacrificing himself as the Flash, and his mentee, his apprentice, in Wally West
Mm.
takes over the mantle of the Flash once everything the dust is settled.
Yeah.
Completely different direction that the Flash goes, right?
Oh,
It's a new
completely. Yeah.
character. Superman, completely different version. Wonder Woman, in a lot of ways, very different.
Mm, yeah.
Batman's got a fresh coat of paint on. Who do you think benefits the most from this time?
I think you see the immediate benefit in Superman.
Yeah. It was the
That's
number one issue, best-selling issue that year, 1986, was Man of Steel number one.
was it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not surprised. And when I started working at a comic shop, a guy that worked there said, "You need to read up on some DC if you're going to work here." And I went, "Okay, where do I start?" And he went, "Man of Steel." I went, "Okay." So like, I hadn't read it until, what was that? 1995, about 95, 94. That's when I first read Man of Steel, and I liked it. I didn't love it, but I think reading it as a bit older and understanding the impact, I think you can see the effect that has. Otherwise, weirdly, I mean, like Batman, you don't necessarily feel it's finding its feet, in terms of continuity just yet. Because one of the first storylines that's supposed to be the start of New Earth continuity, they end up chucking it later, which was a two-parter with the Joker and Catwoman. That doesn't belong in either continuity because it just doesn't fit. So that's considered Earth 85 continuity.
Oh, not easy. That's easy to keep
You
up
know, like
with.
what? So yeah, it's messy, and part of the reason why it's messy is because they didn't clean cut. They kind of went, oh, I suppose we restart. Do we restart now? How about now? No, it wasn't that clean. Wonder Woman definitely benefited, but I suppose you could argue that she benefited from the creative team, like George Perez, by that point being a massive name and taking sole responsibility for that title. But I think the biggest benefit came from the Flash.
Yeah,
It
I
made
think
a
you're right.
much more interesting read, much more interesting title. A lot of people, even if they love Barry, they love Wally more. He's got a whole different approach. He's much more relatable. He is their everyman character. And the times when they write a Justice League story that includes the Flash, and they're trying to make, like in the modern era, and they're trying to make Barry Allen that everyman, it's not the same character. You can't shoehorn that. But
Yeah.
that's what Wally was, and I think it really, really had an impact on that character massively,
Yeah.
in a good way.
Anyone who's listened to this show, I agree with you, by the way, completely. Anyone who's listened to this show for one episode knows that both of us, but specifically me, I'm a big Jeff Johns fan. The one thing I wish he didn't do is bring Barry Allen back. I don't mind him
Yeah.
being in the New 52 and all that kind of stuff. That's cool. Francis Manipul's run and things that come later. I know people like it, but Wally West for a lot of us was the preferred Flash. He earned it. We grew with him. He was a character that he was kind of like a Spider-Man in a way for us
Exactly.
in DC, where
Mm.
he was a regular guy just trying to make it through, the day-to-day grind. He had his Aunt Iris. His uncle was gone.
Mm.
It was a big inspiration to him in the way that he would continue. And then he gets married. All of these things that you grow with this character, you just like him more and more as he develops this. He really advances, like he surpasses Barry.
Yeah, he does.
And the writers do it, the art does it, the powers that they give him and how is able to harness them. Like just the fact that through Wally West's stories, of course, Mark Waid is the writer behind it, but through this character, we get the Speed Force, which
Yes.
is like one of the ultimate Deus Ex Machinas for DC, right? The Speed Force, the Speed Force. You
Yeah,
gotta use the
that
Speed
explains
Force.
everything.
Explains everything. And it's through Wally West's stories. And then even Jeff Johns, he really cuts his teeth in this character. Like he
Mm.
shows how much he loves the Flash. But I wish they would have kept Barry West around and found some other way to, and they just, the more they tried to correct it, like Tom King, I didn't even finish reading that series, but it's just like the butchering of the legacy of Wally West, where they made him almost villainous.
Funnily enough, that's been talked about a lot in the chat, and the effect of what they did to Wally and the injustice of it all. But yeah, it was not well received, and I don't quite understand how they mishandled it so badly. Because I think when Jeff Johns brought Wally West back, in
Rebirth.
Rebirth. Yeah, DC
The
Universe
Rebirth one.
Rebirth.
That was beautiful.
Was
That was
a
amazing.
fantastic moment. And then it just got squandered. But then, of course, he was busy making the TV shows and stuff, so he wasn't kind of providing the steer that he used to provide and being as hands-on. So I kind of think like it was ended up being picked up by other people who didn't really know how best to handle it. And they got it very wrong.
Very wrong. And it's a very, I think, a big misstep. I would say to anybody at DC, you guys really messed that up. A lot of the fans will never forgive you for that. Like, it's one of those marks on the record of DC that you ruined a perfectly good character that a lot of people loved, and you knew they loved them.
Yeah.
And you just butchered it in a way that was unnecessary. Like, he had such, you can see with even the reprints, the commitment that they have to the Wally West era Omnis and the
there's demand
Mark
for that.
Waid's run. Like, even the William Messner Loeb's, was it his run? Like, that's
they've
also
released
getting
one so
reprinted.
far, but yeah, they're doing it.
Yeah, like there's people who have a real attachment to this character all throughout, like his publishing from post-crisis right to Flashpoint, or no, would it be Flashpoint? It would have been
no, you're right. It was before Flash Rebirth.
Final Crisis. Yeah. After that, it was like it was a real shame, but that is definitely a title to invest in the post-crisis era. Flash really finds its stride. Pun intended.
Pun intended. Intend that pun, Mo Flipper. Actually, Omega Bread said the Anti-Monitor isn't so much as a character than a Deus Ex Machina. The name and design is crap, though. It is. It's a crap name, the Anti-Monitor. Like, what? He doesn't like the screen bits of his computer. Like, what?
Yeah, it's very much an easy way to. This is the opposite of himself. This is his bad version. Yeah, it's so silly.
Yeah, it's
anytime you
silly,
try to put anti. Anytime you try to put anti in front of stuff, it just sounds forced.
It does sound forced.
No matter what.
Apart from maybe Anti-Venom, which sort of makes, because you do get Anti-Venom. You know?
Yeah, like I want the Anti-Venom to save my life, but anything other anti is just like, you're annoying just for using it. Just for using anti something, you're annoying.
Let's take a little quick look-see at what's old to the Omniverse. At number 5, it's the Authority Reading Order 1999 to 2011. Number 4, the comics that inspired the MCU, which I completely forgot was a post on the site. I need to update that. It's probably 3 years out of date. Number 3, Secret Wars 1984 to 85, the original event. Number 2, Ultimate Spider-Man Reading Order, which is normally our reliable number 1. And at number 1 this month, the most popular reading order is Invincible, 2002 to 2018.
There's been so many ways where they've tried to include Crisis in like the movies, the multimedia, because it's the multiverse, right? So the movies are part of the multiverse, and this is the best way to read it. Read it in the comics.
It's like with Spider-Verse. Do you know what? The film was great. The first film, at least, haven't seen the second one still, but about to this weekend.
Great,
but the proper Spider-Verse with tons and tons of Spider-Men could not work in TV, whether it's animated or in film or anything like that. Just couldn't work. It's the only place you can do it is comics.
Yeah,
That's why comics are superior.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love the Spider-Verse movies. They're really, really cool. Great attempt at making that work, adapting it, but nothing's going to be better than the comic book version. With Crisis especially, George Perez is the only person who can properly tell that story.
Can you imagine anyone else drawing it?
Animated, television-wise, it's just not going to work.
You're right.
Sorry.
And in answer to my question earlier, which was who's the villain in the animated version, BC Scrubs said it's Anita Monitor. So that must be the Monitor's sister.
Right. You know, they had to even change the monitor to
sorry, it's Anti-Monitor. It was sorry, Scrubs.
All the character changes that they do, they even made it Anita Monitor.
Oh, it's just getting out of hand now.
Oh man, that's hilarious. Well, as always, I love these Speakeasy episodes. They're fun. They're fun to prep for, even though we just kind of go off the fly. It's nothing really like, it's not a dissertation. This isn't a TED Talk. This is just two friends talking off the top of their head
And having a
about
few drinks.
and having a few drinks. So we apologize to Marv Wolfman and George Perez, rest in peace, for not off the top mentioning that you're the creators of this, but
Yes.
all
Sorry.
credit goes to those two gentlemen for this very, very epic, dense undertaking of comic book storytelling that I think is, for better or worse, one of those events that made people go, maybe a summertime event is in order.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it's nice and sometimes it's not so great, but this was one of those things that left an indelible mark in comic book publishing for sure.
Indeed.
Nothing was the same after this.
Undeniably. So I've just noticed there is still chat going on. We're not going to address it now, but if you do want to join a continued conversation, hop on to our Discord where we're constantly talking about all this geeky shiz, and no doubt this will carry on there.
Absolutely. Yes. It's always fun in the Discord.
Yeah.
Everybody that's watched with us on Twitch, thank you for joining us. We appreciate that. Hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, do the same thing. Thumbs up, subscribe. You might be number 900.
Ooh.
And don't forget to visit omniversecomics.guide, where you'll find everything related to the show, the podcast, collector item specials, reading orders. For those of you who are going to go out and buy some of these books that we talk about, check out the reading orders that Dave has made. Second to none. And we intend that pun.